Greetings to all lovers of mystery and secrets. The history of humanity holds many unresolved mysteries, and numerous things provide full evidence of that. Just take a look at these peculiar mountains, which upon closer analysis turn out to be entirely the work of human hands. And these cliffs, they are cut perfectly evenly. How is this possible? Perhaps everything was not as written in the works of scholars and historians? Maybe much of it is intentional fabrication? But who would need this? Let's delve into it and figure it out. In our time, a significant number of people are already discovering inconsistencies. Whether it's a cultural layer or climate change, not to mention the multitude of openly suppressed and concealed artifacts, the very existence of which history is unable to explain. In the present time, a situation has emerged in which ancient history essentially needs to be completely rewritten. Too many real facts contradict the picture that official historical science presents to us, said the renowned scientist Andrei Sklyarov. These words truly reflect our current reality, even though they were spoken several years ago. Today, I want us to pay attention to cliffs, mountains, and megaliths, as admiring mountains is pure delight. Yet, sometimes their contours seem distantly familiar, and certain rock formations resemble human faces, and this is not without reason. Today, we will explore these natural wonders and try to understand who created all of this and for what purpose. And in the end, we will examine the remarkably even stone cuts. How can this be explained at all? Even in ancient times, people paid attention to the whimsical outlines of rocks. Back then, they lacked the knowledge and skills to explain the nature of their appearance. People believed that stones were actually living beings, and within them, a hidden essence was embodied, resembling the form they took. That's why people carefully protected such rocks and worshipped them, venerating nature and spirits. For instance, the veneration of stone cliffs has persisted in the mythology and folklore of many cultures around the world. Some tribes believed that such stones were once real people who, for some reasons, were transformed into stone by the gods themselves. In the French commune of Carnac, there are thousands of megalithic granite stones known as the Carnac stones. These stones vary in size and weight, ranging from 50 to 350 tons each. What's important is that all of them stand vertically. Interestingly, there is much less discussion and writing about the Carnac stones compared to the well-known Stonehenge. However, it's these stones that constitute the largest megalithic complex in the world. No one knows who erected these stones and for what purpose. It is generally believed that they were constructed around 4,500 years ago. An interesting fact is that when viewed from the sky, the stones are arranged in geometric patterns, holding numerous mysteries within them. The Carnac megalithic complex itself is a remarkable archaeological site that encompasses numerous mounds and gigantic dolmens. Around 3,000 menhirs are arranged in alleys and rows that span approximately 3 kilometers. However, the most significant challenge in studying Carnac is its history. For millennia, people have been causing damage to this ancient megalithic complex. Its history has always held a significant place in Europe. Celts and ancient Romans have left their marks in Carnac. The stones bear depictions of Roman gods and Celtic symbols. Moreover, tumultuous battles unfolded here. There's even a legend that the stones are enemies of King Arthur, enchanted by the wizard Merlin. But all of these are legends from local inhabitants. However, the invasions of wild nomadic tribes, wars, and natural disasters, all of this significantly altered Carnac. This is its history. Over centuries, peasants hauled away some of the stones for their own use, as everything was valuable in their livelihoods. And some stones were used in the construction of roads, houses, and other necessities. Therefore, it's quite challenging now to imagine what this complex was like several thousand years ago. Judging by ancient depictions, several centuries ago, there were many more stones in Karnak, and they were densely arranged. Archaeologists believe that the stones were carved from local rock formations. However, it's unclear how these stones were transported to the site and erected. Some of these stones weigh several tons. The majority of people lean towards the idea that the Karnak stones served as a place of worship for gods. Indeed, ancient Gauls and Celts used stones for religious cults. However, they were created long before the appearance of the tribes we are familiar with in these regions. As French researcher Jean Markel wrote in his book, megalithic monuments are considered Druidic or indicative of Celtic or Gaulish culture. However, megaliths were erected at least 2,000 years before the arrival of the Celts. For example, here's how the place looked in 1921. However, time hasn't been kind to these structures. It's now difficult to determine where the stones end and the surroundings begin. At times, they are interrupted and lost in overgrowth. Beyond that, they continue to deteriorate and vanish. Even attempts at restoration have not yielded significant results, despite the fact that the builders of such megaliths possessed significant scientific knowledge. Interestingly, in the 20th century, it was discovered that they even understood things that we are only beginning to uncover. In the years 1970 to 1974, scientists from Scotland published articles that argued that the Karnak stones and their arrangement unequivocally demonstrate the fact that ancient people were not only familiar with astronomy but also possessed extensive knowledge in this field. However, it should be noted that after these articles were published, the scientific community began to criticize and ridicule the Scottish researchers. Yet, if we were to simply consider, even for a moment, that they were correct, it would change the entire official history, requiring it to be rewritten from scratch. There are quite a few places like this that have preserved our history. Take, for example, the Alata Mountains, translated as Golden Mountains. At the foothills of these mountains lies a breathtaking place known as the Valley of the Kings. This name was not given randomly. Many leaders found their resting place here. The total number of burial mounds exceeds 100. But even in such a stellar location, there is a standout. This is the Great Salbik Kurgan, also known as the Salbik Pyramid, and for good reason. It was first described in the late 19th century by the well-known Gerard Friedrich Miller. The height of the kurgan prior to excavation was 11.5 meters, making it the largest kurgan in the Valley of the Kings. Here is a photo of it prior to excavation. According to official history, it dates back to the 15th century BCE. The base of the kurgan is a square with sides measuring 70 meters. In the 1950s, an expedition of scientists discovered a complex inside the kurgan that resembled Stonehenge. More megaliths were found. Here are the excavations of the Great Salbik Kurgan conducted in 1954 to 1956. By the way, pay attention to the stone masonry on top of the megaliths in this photo. Neither in the reconstruction model nor in the current location are these stones present. It was quickly discovered that the original height of the man-made structure reached about 25 meters. The mounds settled over time, and the wind also played its part. Now, there's no trace of the kurgan left. Only a flat platform and leaning stones arranged around the perimeter, which are protected by the state. Despite the historical mystery, the construction details of this complex engineering structure are known. The earth preserved everything, even the logs had to be sawed when dismantling. However, it's unclear why and where these logs disappeared to, as they are so well preserved. In this photo, we clearly see how local workers are simply sawing these logs. Of course, it's possible that the climate in those times was more humid in these areas. After all, the massive larch logs were brought from somewhere. Unlikely from distant lands. So it's possible that dense forests could have grown in the mountains. But that's not all. Around the pyramid, there is a square enclosure with sides of 70 meters made of sandstone, which can hardly be called anything other than a megalith. Look at the shape of the stones with edges cut as smoothly as if by a saw. When observing something like this, the immediate question that arises is, how could they achieve such precise cutting of stone edges, and what kind of tool could have existed to do this? Were there truly master craftsmen in stoneworking? But where could they have gone? By the way, cut stones are found all over the world. For instance, in the sands of Saudi Arabia on the western edge of the desert, there's an unusual artifact. This place attracts both archaeologists and numerous tourists. It's a massive limestone block that has been split in half. The gap between the rock halves is incredibly thin and even, as if an unknown giant sliced it with a sharp knife. This rock has been known to people since ancient times. It even bears drawings and inscriptions that trace back in history for more than 2,000 years. However, the origin of this split still raises many questions. I believe it's not a far-fetched idea to consider that stones are also living organisms. After all, they are integral inhabitants of our planet. They surround us everywhere. Our ancestors created amulets from stones and enchanted talismans for a reason. Stones possess far more extensive properties than those we are familiar with. We have an exciting journey ahead of us through the amazing places of our planet, so be sure to subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your attention, and see you in the upcoming videos.